My name is Maria Alvarez. I am 38 years old. I work as a cleaner and sometimes as a helper in small houses. For 18 years, I carried a secret so heavy that even my own children did not know the full truth. Because I gave birth to 7, but I told the world I had only 6. The day my daughter stood in front of me, her eyes filled with tears, and asked, "Tell me the truth. Who am I really?" My heart nearly stopped beating, because in that moment, the secret I had buried for 18 long years was no longer hiding. It was standing right in front of me. But to understand that moment, you must first understand who I was and what I did, and why I carry a pain inside my chest that never truly sleeps. I was born poor, I married poor, and I lived in a small broken house at the edge of the city in Florida, where the streets were dusty and the nights were too quiet. And my husband worked as a gardener in one of the most luxurious mansions I had ever seen. The mansion was owned by Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, one of the richest couples in the city. People who had everything: big cars, shining floors, golden lights, but no children's laughter in their long empty halls. My husband Daniel worked there every day, cutting roses and shaping trees, while I stayed home taking care of our 6 children, washing clothes by hand, cooking simple food, and trying to make little things look like enough. Our life was hard. Sometimes we did not have enough bread, sometimes the roof leaked when it rained, and sometimes I cried at night quietly, so my children would not hear me. Then one morning, when I felt dizzy and weak, I went to the small clinic near our house, and the nurse smiled softly and said words that made my hands shake. "You are pregnant again." I walked home slowly that day, my mind full of fear, because I loved my children with all my heart, but I did not know how we could feed another mouth, how we could buy more clothes, how we could survive another winter. When I told Daniel that night, he was silent for a long time, staring at the floor, and I could see something heavy moving inside his thoughts. Weeks later, he came home with a strange look in his eyes, a look I had never seen before, a mix of hope and shame. He sat next to me and held my hands, and in a low voice, he told me that Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore could not have children, that they had tried for many years, that they were tired of empty rooms and quiet birthdays. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "They want our baby." At first, I thought he was joking, but his face was serious. His hands were shaking. And he told me about the offer, about the money, about a new house, about food for our children, about school books and warm beds. "They will take the baby girl as soon as she is born," he said. "They will raise her as their own, and she will have everything we cannot give her." I felt like someone had cut my heart open, because that baby was already alive inside me, already moving, already part of my body and soul. I shouted at him, I cried, I told him he was crazy. I told him no mother could ever give her child away like that, not for money, not for comfort, not for anything. But Daniel kept talking, not with anger, but with desperation, reminding me of our 6 children sleeping on thin mattresses, reminding me of the nights we had no milk, reminding me of the landlord who wanted his rent. He said the money would change everything, that our other children would not suffer anymore, that this one baby would live like a princess instead of in poverty. For days we argued. For nights I turned my back to him in bed, holding my stomach and whispering sorry to the little life inside me. Then one evening, I looked around our small house. I saw my oldest son trying to fix his torn shoes with glue. I saw my daughter coughing under a thin blanket, and I felt something inside me break slowly. I placed my hands on my belly and cried, because I knew I was choosing between 1 child and 6, between my heart and their survival. In the end, I said yes, but it did not feel like a choice, it felt like surrender. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore were happy when Daniel told them. They promised to take care of everything. They promised that the baby would never know hunger, never know cold, never know the pain of being poor. Months passed, my stomach grew bigger, and every kick from my baby girl felt like a question. asking me why. When the day of birth arrived, I was taken to a private hospital, a place so clean and bright that I felt like I did not belong there. And Mrs. Whitmore was waiting outside the room, dressed in white, her eyes full of hope. After hours of pain and tears, I heard my baby cry for the first time, a soft and fragile sound that filled the room with life. They placed her on my chest for a short moment. She was so small, so warm, her tiny fingers touching my skin, and in that second, I wanted to run away with her and never look back. But the door opened, and everything changed. The nurse gently lifted my baby girl from my arms, and I remember how my fingers tried to hold her just 1 second longer, as if my skin could refuse what my mind had already agreed to. But the nurse smiled softly and said it was time. Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward with trembling hands, her eyes shining with tears of joy, while mine were burning with a pain so deep I thought I would stop breathing. I watched as they wrapped my daughter in a pink blanket that did not belong to me, and in that moment, I felt something inside my chest tear apart. Because I knew I was watching my child leave my life, before she had even opened her eyes to the world. I cried loudly, not caring who heard me, not caring that the room was full of strangers, because that cry was not only pain, it was the sound of a mother losing her baby while she was still alive. Daniel stood beside me, holding my hand, whispering that this was for the best, that our children would eat well now, that we would have a better home. But his voice sounded far away, like it was coming from another world. When they walked out of the room with my baby, I felt empty. My arms were light, but my heart was heavy, and I turned my face to the wall so no one would see the shame and regret on my face. We received the money a few days later, more money than I had ever seen in my life. And we moved to a slightly better house. We bought beds for the children, new clothes, and enough food to fill the kitchen shelves. My 6 children were smiling more. They were sleeping better. And Daniel looked relieved for the first time in years. But I felt like a ghost walking inside my own life. At night, when everyone was asleep, I would sit alone and imagine my baby girl in a large, bright room, sleeping in a soft crib, maybe crying for milk, maybe reaching for a mother who was not me. I started hearing her cry in my dreams, and sometimes I woke up with my arms wrapped around an empty pillow, calling a name that no one had given her yet. Months passed, and my pain did not become smaller. It became sharper, like a quiet knife that moved every time I breathed. One afternoon, I followed Daniel to the mansion without telling him. I stood outside the tall gates and looked at the house where my daughter was living, and I felt both anger and gratitude at the same time. Through a window, I saw Mrs. Whitmore holding a baby wrapped in white, and even from far away, I knew it was her. I knew the shade of her tiny head, the way she moved her hands. That was the moment I understood that I could not stay away, because being alive without seeing her was worse than any poverty. That evening, I did something that changed my life again. I went to the mansion and asked to see Mrs. Whitmore, my hands shaking, my heart beating fast. And when she appeared in front of me, elegant and calm, I lowered my eyes and spoke with a voice full of fear. I begged her to let me work in the house as a maid. I told her I needed a job, that I could clean, cook, wash, anything. And I did not say the real reason at first, because the real reason was too dangerous. She looked at me for a long time, as if she could see the truth inside my chest. And then she asked softly, "Is this about the baby?" My eyes filled with tears, and I nodded. After days of discussion between her and her husband, they called me back and gave me their answer. But their kindness had a sharp edge. "You can work here," Mr. Whitmore said, his voice cold and clear, "but you must remember your place." Mrs. Whitmore continued, "You will treat her only as our daughter. You will never tell her the truth. You will never show her that you are her mother. Not with words, not with actions, not with looks. I felt the air leave my lungs, because the condition was cruel, but the thought of seeing my daughter every day was stronger than my pride. I agreed. From that day, I became a maid in the house where my child lived like a princess. I cleaned the floors she crawled on. I washed the dishes after her birthday parties. I folded the little dresses that I wished I had chosen myself. They named her Sophia. The first time she looked at me with her big bright eyes and smiled, I had to turn away quickly so no one would see the tears running down my face. As she grew, she learned to walk across the shiny marble floors, and sometimes she would fall, and my body would move forward by instinct, but I would stop myself and let Mrs. Whitmore lift her instead. When she said her first word, Mama, she was looking at another woman, and I felt jealousy burn inside me like fire, mixed with guilt because I had no right to feel jealous. Still, I stayed. I watched her first day of school, standing near the door like a shadow. I watched her laugh in the garden, where Daniel once cut roses. I watched her blow out candles on a cake bigger than anything my other children had ever seen. At home, my 6 children were growing too, and I tried to be strong for them, cooking dinner, helping with homework, hiding the secret that was living between 2 houses. Sometimes I felt happiness when I saw Sophia smiling, when I saw that she was safe and loved, and I told myself that maybe I had done the right thing. Maybe this was the price of giving her a better life. But every night, when I returned to my small house and lay in my bed, I touched my empty chest and whispered her name into the darkness, wondering if one day she would ever know who I truly was. Years passed, like quiet waves, and Sophia grew into a beautiful young woman, with long dark hair and thoughtful eyes. And every year it became harder for me to hide the truth that lived between us like a silent wall. On her 18th birthday, the mansion was filled with lights and music. Guests dressed in expensive clothes were laughing loudly, and I was moving between them with a tray in my hands, pretending that my heart was not shaking. That night, something happened that none of us expected. The next morning, after the celebration, the house was quiet, and Sophia went into her father's office, looking for some documents for her university application, because she wanted to study medicine and help people who were suffering. While she was searching through the drawers, a small brown envelope fell to the floor, and papers slipped out across the carpet. She bent down to collect them, but her eyes stopped on a medical report with her parents' names written clearly at the top. It was a detailed report from many years ago, signed by a specialist, explaining that both Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore had a permanent medical condition that made it impossible for them to have children naturally. Not for a short time, not with treatment, but forever. Her hands began to shake as she read the words again and again, because she had always believed she was a miracle, a late surprise, a blessing that came after many prayers. I was never possible, she whispered to herself, her voice weak and confused. She searched the envelope again and found more medical files, dates from years before her birth, and everything pointed to one clear truth, that she could not be their biological daughter. I am not really theirs, she said softly, and her world started to fall apart. A few minutes later, I heard raised voices coming from the office, and my body froze when I recognized Sophia's tone, shaking and full of pain. How could you hide this from me? She cried. Mrs. Whitmore answered in a trembling voice. Sophia, please, listen to us. Listen to what? She shouted, holding the medical report in her hand. That you can never have children, that I am not your real daughter, that my whole life is built on a secret. Mr. Whitmore tried to stay calm. We loved you, and we still love you, he said quietly. But who am I? She asked, her eyes filled with tears. Where did I come from, and why was I given away? The tray slipped from my hands in the hallway, and crashed onto the marble floor. Because the truth we had buried for 18 years was now breathing inside the house. Sophia ran out of the office, her face pale, her breathing fast, and she almost collided with me. She looked at me carefully, as if searching for answers in my eyes. "Did you know?" she asked suddenly, her voice low but sharp. My lips trembled. "Yes," I whispered. She stepped back as if my answer had hurt her deeply. "So everyone knew except me," she said, her voice breaking. "Even you." That night she locked herself in her room, and the mansion, which was always bright and full of life, felt dark and heavy. Days passed, and Sophia stopped eating with the family. She stopped smiling, she stopped going out, and sometimes I heard her crying while I was cleaning near her door. One afternoon, I gathered my courage and knocked gently. "Miss Sophia," I said softly, "may I come in?" After a long silence, she answered, "Come." She was sitting by the window, the medical report still on her desk, her eyes red and tired. "Why did they lie to me?" she asked quietly, her voice full of pain. "They were afraid," I replied carefully, "afraid of losing you." "I feel lost," she said. "I do not know who I am anymore. I do not know if my real parents wanted me, or if they just threw me away." Her words felt like fire inside my chest, because I knew the truth. I knew the poverty, the fear, the desperate choice we made. "I want to find them," she continued, her voice shaking. "I need to ask them why they abandoned me." My heart began to race, because I imagined her discovering that her own mother worked in this house as a maid, that I had agreed to give her away for money, that I had watched her grow in silence. I was terrified that if I told her the truth, she would hate me even more, that she would look at me with disgust and call me selfish. But at the same time, I could see her mind drowning in confusion, her soul breaking under the weight of questions, and my heart ached for her suffering. That night, I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling and felt like I was standing between two fires. One fire was the fear of losing her forever if I spoke, and the other fire was the pain of watching her slowly destroy herself in doubt and sadness. If I stayed silent, she would continue living in confusion, searching for shadows and blaming strangers. If I told her the truth, she might look at me and see only a mother who abandoned her and sold her for money. I walked through the dark house and stopped near her closed door, raising my hand to knock, then lowering it again, my heart beating loudly in my ears. "What should I do?" I whispered to myself, tears running down my face. Should I protect myself and stay silent? Or should I protect my daughter and risk her hatred? I stood alone in the hallway, feeling small and lost, knowing that one decision could heal her heart or break it even more. As the night grew deeper, I kept asking the same question again and again, my soul trembling in the silence. What should I do? But before we decide what she should do now, let us return to her first choice. When Maria gave her baby away, was it a terrible mistake, or was it a sacrifice to save her 6 children who were already suffering? Do you believe she was wrong, even if her heart was broken? Or do you think that sometimes love makes a parent do something that looks cruel, but feels necessary in a painful moment? Life does not always give us clear right and wrong answers. Sometimes it gives us 2 painful paths, and we must choose which pain we can live with. Now she stands again, at another crossroad, facing a second decision that could change everything. If you were in Maria's place, standing between fear and love, what would you do? Would you tell your daughter the truth, even if it risks her hatred? Or would you stay silent, believing that silence protects what is left of her peace? Share your thoughts, because maybe your voice can help answer the question that has lived in this mother's heart for 18 long years.